While being in Britain in November, I already talked about us being or going to a dollhouse store, and there I found this little lady. I was very impressed with all the stuff in there, and yeah, then I stumbled upon her and I wanted to have at least one of them. Because she is a teeny tiny porcelain doll. What I didn't know at this point was that she has 4 points of articulation. She can move her arms and her legs, which I think is quite neat for being so small. And because I'm me, I couldn't just leave her like she was. No, 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 no. That doesn't work. I had to remove all of her stuff and turn her into something different. I have to say, I was quite impressed that she came with undergarments. But on the other side, a lot of stuff was just glued in place, which I can understand for being such a tiny scale and being mass-produced, because afterwards I looked her up and I was able to find her in multiple stores, so she must be a mass-produced doll, and I even found quite a lot of them completely without any makeup on or without any hair on, so you can basically create your own, basically what I'm doing here, but without having to try to remove the glue. And for a brief moment I thought about doing a whole series of 1/12 scale porcelain dolls out of different eras, and then I decided, while I was doing her, there is no freaking way. You know, I sometimes already struggle with my 1/6 scale dolls. Now, with this 1/12 scale, it was even more difficult, and repainting her was barely possible. With my other 1/12 scale dolls, they have basically the same sized head as some Monster Highs or Barbies, so that works, but with her, no way. I can already spoiler that I am quite happy with how she turned out. I'm insanely happy with how she turned out for how tiny she is. But damn, that was exhausting. And I think I worked on her the 2 weeks of the 3 weeks I was in England, so I took more breaks and more time to make her. Yeah, so it's highly unlikely that you will see another one in this scale. At this point I had already decided what I wanted her to be in the end. And of course I went with my more or less default setting, which is Marie Antoinette. And yes, it is ridiculous to try to make a robe à la Française in this size. But yeah, I was set on the idea, and I already started to paint her shoes in the right color so they fit the gown. I went through Rainbow Fine Arts supplies and found a satin she does not really use, and she wasn't really bothered by giving it to me, so yeah, I used that and a ton of satin ribbon that I basically or originally gifted her. Now I took parts of them back home with me. But yeah, the idea of turning this little porcelain doll into a Marie Antoinette-esque girl was so stuck in my head, I wasn't able to not do it. I already altered the shape of her shoes, feet, pump feet, whatever, slightly more to a shoe that was worn in that time span in Rococo era. And then I used liberal amounts of pan pastels in white to get her paler. And I used MSC in between. I am not sure if that is really necessary with porcelain dolls, or if there is another way, but yeah, the MSC worked quite nicely, so I was happy about that. And I think I did 3 or 4 layers of white before I then started, or in between I already started with some blush. But yeah, I think I did 3 or 4 layers until she was pale enough for my liking. Painting in her face was completely done with acrylics. I didn't even try to use watercolor pencils. And unsurprisingly, there is not a ton of shading going on in her face. Because she's far too small. There was no way of me giving her a very detailed repaint. But for her size, I was quite impressed what I was able to do with her face. Obviously, because she is Rococo, she needed a little beauty patch and everything. And yeah, I have to say, I do think she turned out quite nicely. I was surprised myself, because I was not sure if I would be able to improve her. I'm still not sure that I improved her all that much, but at least she does not look worse than she did before, and that is something I'm very proud of with this tiny scale. And I think I said now more than enough that this was such a tiny scale, so I stop that now. When I was in Britain the last time in May or March last year, I'm not sure anymore, I made some yarn wefts for Rainbow Fine Art. And lucky for me, she made a wig that she wasn't very happy with, and there she is glittering with her chest for her pirate. Anyway, she was not very happy with the wig, so I could use the brushed out yarn for this girl, which was fairly nice, because yeah, I already struggle with using nylon hair or dressing nylon hair in 1:6 scale, so it was a relief to have yarn hair, which is easier to style. And after the hair was glued in place, I took out some paper clay, which is fairly lightweight when it is dry in the end, and just stuck it onto her head to give me some understructure to then do the whole updo situation that was done in the Rococo era. I have no idea how these hairstyles are called in English. Anyway, is it a beehive was later. But it looks still quite similar, maybe even higher. Or certainly higher than a beehive, but yeah. I just stuck some clay onto her head, and then I was able to glue the hair on top of it into shape, so yeah, it all could dry together. After I was fairly certain that she is dry, it was time to first of all put some tacky glue on there to keep the hair in place forever. And then it was time to do some curls, which was quite the challenge. I did the broader curls, or the more prominent curls in the back with a toothpick. I curled the toothpick around, or the hair around the toothpick, and then just glued it in place forever. And yeah, as a last step, I then took out the straightening iron and yeah, made some teeny tiny curls. And I have to admit, I really like the hairstyle. What I don't really like about the hairstyle is that I had the idea to then do some decorations for it. And making bows this tiny is one thing. But trying to make a rose myself... Gosh, I still hate myself for that. When I was finally satisfied with the hair, it was time to torture myself with the next thing, which was panniers. Basically the hoop under construction that supports the skirts, which is basically just on the sides. Doing that for a 1/6 scale doll was fine, but I struggled quite a lot, and I had to take a lot of breaks because my eyes were starting to hate me. But I think the panniers turned out quite cute, and I used her original underpants, stitched some lace onto them to make them a bit more fancy, and with those and the panniers I already thought, oh, I could keep her like this. That looks so cute. How can a hoop construction be cute? Make it small, and it is. For the underskirt, I decided that it would be a great idea to try to make it as accurate to the original garments as possible. So I basically just stitched the sides, and yeah, the whole top part, it is cut in a half circle, in a slightly rounded shape, because otherwise we would have had a little bit too much folding going on there, or folds and wrinkles going on there, and that in this scale would have looked quite goofy. So I decided to cut away some of it, but I still stitched on 2 satin ribbons, one in the front, one in the back, and tied the skirt on. First the back panel, and then, to cover that up, the front panel. So she has 2 little bows underneath the rest of her outfit. Just putting that out there, that I try to be as historical accurate as possible in this scale. I think sometimes I really like to punish myself. And just to make it clear again, I'm not a fashion historian. I have no idea if any of that, what I try to do pattern-wise, is historical accurate. From what I know, it is halfway accurate, I think. So, yeah. Then I stitched together the main robe à la française, or sackback gown. When that was, I didn't record any of that because at this point I was slightly fed up with it. Just wanted to be finished, and I still had to decorate everything and do this and do that. And yeah, I did all of that off camera, and I think the robe à la française alone took me 3 or 4 days. So, yay. And one last time, for the teeny tiny scale she is in, I think she turned out amazing. I'm so proud of this little girl. And yeah, I hope you did enjoy this little journey my English porcelain doll that possibly comes from China. That is now Marie Antoinette. So we have China, Britain, French, and German. Yay, multicultural. Anyway, I hope you like her, and let me know what you think about her in the comments down below. And I hope we will see us in another video. Until then, bye.